Gillian Keegan, I'd like to start with an issue that is concerning many parents, it's concerning MPs and also campaigners. You are reviewing sex education in schools. Have you found any evidence so far of what some people have said is inappropriate teaching, like children being taught how to safely choke one another in our schools?
Well, that's what the dossier that Miriam Cates, my colleague, put together, which was actually a review of all the materials. And what we'll be doing, the next part of this, we're bringing forward the review and we'll be setting out more details in the near future. But we'll be looking for where there is evidence of that in schools. So obviously you see some cases, and we've been tagged in things on Twitter and stuff like that. But the question is really how widely spread is this issue. And we think most schools are probably doing things in a very reasonable, age-appropriate way. But of course, that's what we need to check.
So you don't believe at the moment that this is a widespread issue? Because some people have said that this is a culture wars thing, that actually that the government, maybe Conservative MPs, want to stoke this up, and it's not a real problem. It's something that happens on the margins in the minority of schools. What would you say to that?
Oh, I think it's difficult to tell, and I think it's quite a tricky subject. And one of the things that we work at, so the guidance that we already sent out, it was introduced actually and made compulsory during the pandemic, introduced just before the pandemic. So it is relatively new. So it is right that we would review and we would check what's actually going on. But I think there have been some cases of, for example, we say materials must be transparent and made available to parents. And we have heard reports of parents saying that they've been blocked from seeing materials, or materials haven't been shown because of copyright reasons, etc. So we are planning to write out and just remind schools that that is an important check and balance, because clearly parents want to know that their children are being taught in an age-appropriate way, and they want to know what their children are being taught, which is perfectly reasonable.
Ofsted has said that they think it would be beneficial for schools to be given more guidance on teaching trans issues in schools. Do you think that schools should be forced to tell parents if their child is identifying as another gender within the school environment?
Well, this is another area that we are looking to bring forward guidance, so we've committed to do that. We will be working with a number of stakeholders, and then we'll be issuing draft guidance in due course, and then obviously we'll have quite a long consultation, because it is quite tricky depending age-appropriate, parents and parental involvement and consent, and clearly we want to make sure that we do the right thing for the child, but also to support the parents and the teachers as well to know how best to deal with those sensitive areas.
What do you think about it, though? Because some people say, well, if a child wants to identify as one gender in school, they may not want to tell their parents, that the school should protect them in that case, while others say, well, the parents have the right to know. Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, it's not really for me to, before we've issued draft guidance and before we've had a consultation, to declare, what I think. I mean, the reality is, it's not really about what I think, it's what a whole load of stakeholders think as well. And we do know that it's tricky to navigate this, particularly if there is a difference between, like an older child potentially and parents. But it is something that we do need to get right, and it is something that we will have a long consultation on, and many people will get to give their views, and obviously we'll have to work out what the best thing is to navigate those. But most importantly is to make sure that we support any child in school.
Do you think that schools push back enough on some of those areas at the moment, or do you think that some schools find it difficult to know how much they should question a child's choices, particularly on gender?
I think it is probably difficult for some people. I mean, we've just had a whole debate across Scotland, and, we've seen where that's gone. And, there's no doubt that this is a difficult issue. It's a very complex issue as well. And, there's competing rights in cases. So I'm sure that some people do find it difficult. But, that doesn't mean that we, shouldn't be helping people navigate their way through this.
I mean, talking about what children may come into contact with, often parents are worried about the rise of misogyny online, of people like Andrew Tate that children may come into contact with on apps like TikTok. and the attitudes that he promotes. Do you think that misogyny, online misogyny and attitudes to women is something that really should be part of the sex education curriculum?
Well, there are a lot of parts of relationship and what's a healthy relationship, what's an unhealthy relationship. And I know many schools will have used this case as well because it was very topical. So I think that is, an ideal example of, what isn't healthy in terms of, promoting in terms of healthy relationships and what is a healthy relationship. So this is the whole point, of having this time in school, this guidance and the time and space to discuss these issues. This landscape has changed a lot, certainly since I was at school, probably since you were at school as well. The rise of the availability of access to online porn, which obviously we want to try and reduce from the other angle, from the online harms bill. But there is no doubt that children are getting access to materials which are deeply disturbing and clearly even sharing with each other. So clearly we need to help them navigate that and really understand what is a healthy relationship.
Yeah, I mean, on that particular point, revenge porn, of course, is something that many people are very concerned about. Is that something that you are looking to include? It's not currently on the curriculum. Do you think it should be?
Well, I mean, we don't set down the whole of the curriculum, but I mean, there was a very, interesting case. I think Georgia Harrison was talking about very recently, and I think, there is certainly a lot of the things that she experienced, and obviously was successful in the courts, has brought a lot of, has highlighted this subject, and I'm sure that has been discussed. I'm sure that's been discussed in some schools.
I want to ask you about whether you're comfortable with what some schools are using now. They are blocking children from having access to toilets during lesson times because there have been behaviour issues. And they're giving young women red cards if they're on their period to show those to get access to toilets. Are you comfortable with schools doing that?
Well, I think what schools are trying to get the balance is making sure that during the class time that everybody is in the class as much as possible, but also accepting obviously that there are times when children will need to go to the toilet and that getting that balance right. But what they're really trying to do is just to make sure that they can teach a full class during class time as much as possible.
But some say it's shaming girls, it's forcing girls to say that they're on their period when actually they might find that very embarrassing. They might not want to do that publicly.
Clearly, and you have to handle that very sensitively. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to make that public myself when I was in school, aged 13, 14. So, I think that has to be also handled in a sensitive way. I mean, schools, by and large, will get the balance right, but you will always hear stories where potentially they haven't, and then hopefully those discussions will be had with parents and teachers as well.
There's been a big debate about Ofsted recently. Do you think that Ofsted is fit for purpose? Because some people have said that the rating system at the moment, good, requires improvement, is a blunt tool and needs a review. Do you think it does?
Well, Ofsted is there, let's be clear, first and foremost for parents. I mean, we spend a lot of public money on schools, £58.8 billion a year, and we need to make sure that we obviously get good value for money for that, and we need to make sure that parents know, what a school's good at and how a school's rated, etc. So most importantly, it's there to help parents navigate and choose what is a very important decision for their child. And I know most parents do find it very useful when choosing school.
So you think the current system works and doesn't need to be looked at again, despite the criticism?
Well, the criticism, I think, was over, the handling of, and there's a tragic case around, the head, Ruth Perry. That was a tragic case. But the criticism was around how that was handled, and I think Ofsted have put out a statement on that. The criticism about going from outstanding to requires improvement, and that being quite a big drop. But still, I think the system that's in place is there really to aid parents, and what you want to do is make it as simple as possible for parents.
You are, of course, talking to teaching unions, teachers at the moment about pay. Are you concerned about strikes falling during exam periods?
Well, I'm concerned about any strike. I've been concerned about every strike that's happened and any future strikes that may happen. They're disruptive for children. Our children have been through enough with the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of young people are anxiously, anticipating their exams as they start in May. And of course, they're anxious already because many of them, it will be the first exam they've ever done. So we're really concerned to make sure they get all the support they need, and strikes are really not helpful.
Would you urge teachers not to do that? I mean, is it irresponsible, do you think?
I've asked teachers not to strike. I've asked them to pause strikes so that they could come in and have discussions. I asked that on the 21st of February. 5 strikes still went ahead. I've asked them in for pay discussions. We've had an intense period of pay discussions. We've made an offer of £1,000 additional money in addition to 5.4% for 22-23 this year, an additional £1,000 for every teacher and head teacher. And also we've made an offer of 4.5% for next year, 23-24, and the period September to September, the OBR anticipate and forecast inflation will be quite a bit below 2% by then. So that's the context in which we've offered that. We've also said that we would fund that on top of the £2 billion that I got within the first few weeks of the job. So we have tried everything. I mean, I personally have tried everything to get money for schools in the autumn statement, to get more funding to fund this £1,000 additional pay offer, and also to make sure that school budgets can cope with next year's pay offer as well, as per the discussions we've had. But I think it's really important that teachers are aware of this, because if you go on Twitter and if you listen to a lot of questions that I'm getting, basically people seem to think that it's not funded or it won't be funded. And the IFS have actually put something out very useful on their Twitter feed, which has said, that they will have enough money, schools will have enough money, and of course that includes an extra money that we'll be giving, £620 million.
And Gillian Keegan, just finally, we've obviously heard of the sad death of Paul O'Grady today. I just want to get your personal reflections on that news.
Yeah, well, really sad. I mean, he's a fellow Scouser from Liverpool. I mean, he's a legend in Liverpool. He's a legend everywhere. And just such a versatile, long career. Very sad, very unexpected.